Okay, good morning, everybody. Morning. So how many of you felt that, oh my God, from the previous presentation, I have to worry about a lot of devices, a lot of different form of devices, right? I'm going to make this session a little bit more scarier because you're going to have to worry about a lot more than what you saw in the earlier presentation. Thanks, Dino, for the nice setup. So there's two parts to this fundamental discussion, right? One is what's happening around us, and the second part is what's the opportunity in it for you, right? So we'll keep those two threads in our mind, and then as we go along, I'll show you some demos and examples of what's happening around us and how it's likely to shape us, right? And then we'll talk a little bit about how Intel is looking at these things and what we're doing in that space. So let me ask you a question. How many of you have written an app which is not a phone app, not a tablet app, not a laptop app? Raise your hands higher. I see one. Anybody else? I see a few hands go up there, right? So we believe that the world is moving towards this sort of, we were in the past having millions and millions and millions of computers getting added every year to the internet. In the last 5 years, we've seen hundreds of millions of tablets and a billion-odd smartphones getting added. And just to expand that a little further, we believe the world is going to throw in a few more billion things, right? Whatever those things may be. And there are some loose definitions called Internet of Things and wearables and bands and earrings and whatever else may come up. This is what the sort of user internet is likely to be in the future. How many of you have some kind of a band on you which is electronic? Anybody? A few? See one. How many of you would like to get one if it's easily affordable and available around you? Right? So, besides the joke, all of you are consumers, which means effectively you would like to track yourself. Whether you want to admit what is being tracked is a separate discussion. And maybe some of you might also want to share what you're tracking, right? And then go off and build. The number of you who raised your hands as an aspirant to have a device reflects potentially, maybe you're the early adopters, potentially the sentiment of billions of consumers across the globe, which is we're clearly not satisfied with the level of connectivity we have. We have computers, we have tablets, we have smartphones, and now we want a few more things attached to our body and start tracking things. So we'll talk about that, right? So we believe the world is moving towards many devices, right, which we already have in place, connected to many machines which are largely invisible, and many of us call it cloud, right? It's somewhere there, but hundreds and hundreds of millions of servers and cores serving up information, serving up data, and somehow all of this is also beginning to get connected to things to which a few of you are writing code. So what matters, at least from your perspective, I'm assuming, is that's all great, but I have to make money, right? I have to make money from potentially writing applications or writing services. So how are we doing from an app download perspective? Just a quick snapshot. I don't know if you guys can see the screen. On 2013, right, somewhere between 2 billion devices sold or less, almost 56 billion apps downloaded, and somewhere in the range of 18 million software developers across the globe. Although I keep telling Dushyant, I always suspect that number. Is it 18 million? Is it 20 million? Is it 25 million? We don't even know what the definition of a developer today is. A developer is not a guy with some kind of a degree in programming, right? A developer could be anybody who just happened to sit down at home, get an idea, and start writing some simple scripts to produce an application. How do you even know? How do I tag those guys? It's is an interesting question, and hence, what is your competition in some ways is almost invisible to you, right? So if we quickly look at India, relatively smaller number, but I've been doing this for several years now, and as I track this number, I couldn't believe that we're going to have over 1 billion odd apps downloaded even within 1 year in India, and we have somewhere north of 2.5 million developers, at least the way we've been able to tag developers and We need to write a CSS script to go figure out, are you a developer or not, right? And you're probably going to have a tag for that, right? So summary here is pretty good. We have a decent start, I would say, over the last 2 or 3 years in terms of number of apps downloaded. There's a lot of analysis behind this in terms of how many paid, what categories, what segments, etc. But what you want to take away from this is if the worldwide app download was somewhere in the 56 billion range, and India was approximately 1.5 billion with a relatively small smartphone penetration and device penetration. The bottom line is it's all opportunity for you, right? Even from this market. That's potentially one way you want to start thinking about this. I want to quickly touch upon what are we doing. How is sort of Intel contributing to this, and we'll start showing you more and more demos of applications of what developers are doing working with our technologies. Right? Our perspective is there's a growing diversity of platforms. I think we've established that, right? There's variety of platforms. There's desktops, there's laptops, there's tablets, there's smartphones. There's things which connect to the television, which we don't even know, what exactly the terminology is. The Rokus, the Chromecasts, and all kinds of things. There's Chrome devices, Chrome-based devices, which are becoming more and more popular. And then we're starting to just get into things, and we'll give you some more examples of things, right? And also from an OS perspective, our focus is to go support whatever works on our platforms, right? Windows, Android, various versions of Linux, embedded Linux, etc. Chrome browser, Chrome OS, and then of course Mac OS from an Apple perspective. So we'll continue to support developers across all these platforms and make sure there's a lot of back-end engineering and optimizations around each of these, right? Let me quickly start with the PC, right? As I've been with Intel now a little over 20 years, and I've heard the story that the PC is over a few times, and I'm hearing it again. There's a continuous resurgence, and that there's an interesting resilience in that ecosystem of consumers and manufacturers that they keep reinventing this device, right? From when desktop, the whole industry and the ecosystem evolved to start building interesting mobile devices, as we used to call them, laptops, and now notebooks, and now you see an interesting stage where what is being called two-in-ones are emerging. It's a tablet, it's a notebook when you want it, and a tablet when you need it, and we'll see examples of that. What are these is really traditional devices with a pretty significant rich base of applications, which many of you have coded over the last several years. Pretty powerful, adaptable, and more importantly, adjusts to your environment, adjusts to the modern usage, right? And I do want to invite Shweta on stage to give us one example, very quick example. It's a simple thing of what happens when you change your usage, right? You're using something in a traditional mode, you've got a keyboard in front of you, you're doing something, you've got a mouse potentially, and you're editing a picture. And when you move to an environment where you really need to use touch in a tablet mode, how easy is it? More importantly, what is the impact from a software perspective? We'll see a very quick demo of that. What do you got, Shweta? Oh, sorry.
Today I'm going to showcase Krita. Krita is an open source application which was developed. Krita, this is the basic mode that we come. When we open it in laptop mode, there are a lot of controls that show up. And let's say if I want to edit it, it's good when you are using a mouse and a keyboard, because of the lot of controls on the top, on the menu bar, and on the side also. Let's say I want to write something. It's basically a painting application, finger sketching application. Let's say I want to choose a color, and here I can write something. I can write GIDS, and all those things. Let's say when suddenly if I want to change to a tablet mode, this is a Dell XPS system that I have. Right now I'm in laptop mode. If I want to switch to tablet mode, the GUI automatically changes. And here you see that the GUI is simplified, and only the required controls that you want show up. The same thing can be done here, and the GUI automatically adapts based on the tablet.
And you're using your finger on the touch screen.
Yeah. So that's the GUI changes that I've done for tablet mode and for a laptop mode.
So very simple illustration. Again, links back to the previous keynote where you do device detection, and more importantly, mode detection very quickly, right? And the SDKs for these are available. And then as a programmer or as an application developer, you start thinking, what mode is the consumer in, what device is the consumer using, and adjust that. A lot of things are, technical skills clearly to go detect that. Second is, human interface skills. What mode, when you have a mouse, how much expertise do you need, how much fine-grained control do you need. But, what she could be doing is she could be taking this and walking to the stage picture and saying, well, I kind of don't like that, so I'm going to go edit that, and you're probably potentially doing it with your finger. You're not going to be having a mouse in front of you, but the UI adapts to that, right? And we're starting to see more and more applications and people doing this one. Second is we're starting to see people who are building overlays on existing applications where, this kind of control can be pretty easily added. The other thing we're seeing with these platforms is the adapting, integration and adaptation of, sensors and biometrics and recognition, etc. So what this does is basically be able to control your PC or control your device using not just touch, but the other traditional controls like keyboard and mouse, but potentially gestures and voice and other things, right? We're going to get Shweta show us one more of those demos. Okay. All right. Can we get the screen? Anybody here play Fruit Ninja? Okay, the rest of them don't want to admit it, but they do play.
So what I have is an application. It's an overlay on an existing application. I've taken Fruit Ninja as an application as a showcase demo. But there are other, cut the rope or any other application can be used, the same technology can be used on this. So here I'm going to use my gestures to play Fruit Ninja. I'm not even touching my screen, and I'm going to use this is a,
sorry, probably I'm messing up your.
So So here you can see, I'll start the game. I'm not a good game player.
We always have to play.
Yeah.
How much code changes did you have to do in Fruit Ninja?
No code changes in Fruit Ninja.
That's the point, right? We didn't go to Fruit Ninja and say change your code and make this happen.
And this is just for a finger-based application, right?
Yeah.
So any application which is based on gesture control works seamlessly on this.
So this technology, although Shweta is representing, is from a company called TrueTech, and they've built this technology. They couldn't be here, unfortunately, but the point was so there's a couple of things. Let's talk about the technology. Why don't you talk about the camera? What's the camera doing there?
This is the creative camera that we have. This is a 3D sensing camera. The 3D sensing and depth sensing camera. It detects your gestures. Currently, this is the older version, but we are going to launch a latest version, probably another couple of months, which we are going to call as RealSense camera. Here, it's going to detect the finger gesture recognition, voice, and facial analysis of your application. So based on this, we have a couple of applications also. But if you come to a booth, we can show more applications based on this.
So I invite you to check out the booth. So she was able to interact with just the movement of the fingers, and because of the depth, the camera is able to know exactly where you're moving. And we can always continuously improve the resolution. Very little change, or actually no change to the consumer application. We didn't contact Fruit Ninja to go and make these changes, but to illustrate something very simple. And Fruit Ninja is a game which is very dependent on your finger movement, on the screen, right? I mean, many of us have scars from playing Fruit Ninja on a badly, cleaned device. So, all right, thank you, Shweta.
Thanks,
so, these devices, what we also didn't show you is, as we are beginning to add more and more sensing capability on these devices, voice recognition is also becoming a mechanism of using a control or even searching. How many of you use voice-based search recognition on your phone? Voice-based. Quite a few. Keep your hands up, please. Keep your hands up, please. How many of you are happy with it? Reasonable number. Not bad, right? At least 5 to 10% of it. And hence the opportunity, right? You start saying, okay, what else can I do to improve it, right? How do you localize it? How do you, try to improvise on top of it? More importantly, what would you do potentially to add, localized capability to it? Right? So again, opportunity from a voice perspective. And the capability on these platforms, the compute capability, the connectivity capability is there to allow you to go do it. So the previous demo was from this company called Fluid Motion, and that's what you see on the screen here. So moving on, how do you build that kind of awareness? What Shweta showed you from a screen flipping perspective, it's actually relatively easy for you to go integrate into your traditional applications. Maybe you're serving some, we've got a lot of .NET programmers here. Maybe you're serving some existing enterprise customers, building apps for them. there are enough, sorry, I should have put the URL, it's intel.com/software. You can go there and go check out. We have toolkits for that to make it easy for you to detect these kinds of modes and make adjustments based on that. As you saw, all she did was just a flip and it detected, and from there it was able to go off and go into a different mode, and when you come back it will switch relatively seamlessly to the previous mode. From a business perspective, we see a lot of these applications. There are a lot more technologies we're adding to the platform to go off and help your enterprise customers take advantage. I mean, one of the things we hear from our enterprise teams is, man, somehow all the love is going towards all these devices and Android programmers and things programmers. What about me as a traditional enterprise developer building real-world applications and making the world more... I have 5 minutes left. Something wrong? Oh, okay, sorry. Okay. So a lot of the enterprise work is there to, capabilities are there to go off and build applications, right? We won't go into details, but come by our booth and we'll talk about that. In the growing diversity of platforms, very quickly we'll talk about Android, right? You don't need to read this, but all this on the screen shows the devices which have been shipped with Intel processors in them, starting from the Lava phone which we shipped in India. We have a variety of devices through the years coming up, more launches happening in 2014 of various shapes and sizes, and we've publicly gone and said to the external world that this year we expect to ship over approximately 40 million plus devices into the marketplace, growing a base of platforms so that as you program, as you build applications, as you take advantage of our native capabilities, we're actually able to go off and help your install base. We're continuously working with Google and the Android community to make sure we're making improvements to the kernel. We're adding optimized drivers and frameworks to our platform. We're working with the community to have a very highly tuned Dalvik runtime environment. We're making sure that the browsers are very well ported. I mean, browsing performance, as we saw earlier, is extremely critical. We have a bridging technology for NDK apps, which means that if somebody had an app, programmed to a different architecture, we have a bridging technology which will make sure it runs on the Intel platform also seamlessly without the developer doing anything or the consumer even knowing what's happening. And of course, we're getting ready, for the 64-bit environments. We've, made our early announcements in terms of the kernel readiness, etc. And as the ecosystem goes and gets ready for 64-bit, we'll be ready to take advantage of that. And in fact, the architecture support, right? Today, for many of you who know, we're getting ready to go live with millions of devices with Bay Trail platform in 2014. We have a few devices already. And over the next few years, we'll follow it up with Merrifield and Moorfield architecture. So a very rich roadmap of capabilities coming up to support all these devices which are going out in the marketplace. To help developers, essentially, we've got two kinds of developers. Software.intel.com, where largely you're doing programming, you're building apps, you're writing code to make sure applications are optimized, take advantage of native capabilities. I would recommend you go check out software.intel.com. Here we've got emulators, native developer experience, things to help native developers, and of course XDK to allow you to port applications across architectures and build applications across architectures. So for people who are building devices themselves, which I don't suspect is a big number here, there are capabilities to go off and build your own devices for a vertical oriented environment. We're having significant help for them to go off and build these devices native to your environment. Many of our enterprises come to us and say, oh, I want a tablet for retail environment which will only do these 5 things. I do not want a tablet to do a bunch of other things because I wanted a very controlled environment tablet. We've got a lot of capabilities and tools to help them go build that. 01.org/Android is a place I would recommend you guys go check out. It's a community environment. A lot of tools are available there for device developers also. Our focus, before I, get you to show some example, and we'll get one of our partners on stage, is first make sure apps are compatible, uncompromised app compatibility on all our devices across the globe, right? And then get as many of you as we can to start doing native, right? To take advantage of the architecture, to take advantage of the capabilities, to take advantage of the optimizations which we've built in, and then of course start working on more and more unique titles. And we have some pretty cool partnerships going on with EA, with Gameloft, with Tencent in China to go off and build unique capabilities on our platforms. And we'd love to get ideas from you guys to do something unique on Intel, and be happy to sort of partner with you. So, do you guys know about cricket? Anybody heard about cricket? Yeah, a few of you. All right, let's talk about cricket. Come on up, guys. Hi, Prateek. Oh, give them a warm welcome. Harshana, come up on stage. These guys are from, they came down from Hyderabad just to talk to you, right? And that's a true statement, so let's give them a warm welcome. They're going to talk about cricket. I have no idea what cricket is. We'll figure it out, right? Can you guys see this? Why don't you talk about Nautilus while he's setting up? Why don't you set up, and Archana can talk about it?
Yeah, so we developed this company about a year back, and this is our second project.
Oh, the mic's working.
Yeah, this is our second project. Within the first 3 to 4 days of launching this game, we've gotten about 4 lakh downloads already.
$400,000?
4 lakhs, yeah.
Oh.
And we've been featured by Google on the front page. It's been ranking 1 on almost any and every category as of now. It's a free game. Download. Let us know what you think about it.
Okay.
Just
all right.
Go through the demo.
Let's see it. Yeah. Go ahead, Prateek.
These are the boards, nets, exhibition.
Can you hear him? No, not really.
Check. Hello. So these are the modes basically. I'll walk you through the exhibition. Hello. Yep. Hello.
No,
Hello.
That one. All right.
Hello.
Go for it.
Thanks. This is the exhibition mode. You go inside the app. Traditionally, we wanted to make it look classic because co-located game lovers.
Actually, you're better off keeping it on the floor. The shape will be less. Yeah, there you go.
And to approach this classic game, we use traditional frame-by-frame animation. And as you all know, frame-by-frame animation literally hits up the GPU.
So what you're saying is there's not enough performance, you need more.
Yes.
Okay.
But what I'm going to present is, this all are frame by frame. It's handly drawn. And this x86 platform, it performs flawless. We are able to reach 58 to 59 FPS on this device.
58 frames per second?
Yes,
that's pretty
exactly.
cool. We're going to see a 6 anytime soon? Well, so this is not a rigged demo. It doesn't mean that he only hit 6s. He also can get out, right?
Yes.
It's a real demo.
As I told you, it's a hardcore game.
Pretty cool. We'll see one more. What do you guys think?
Yeah, all the eye mechanics in it. Yeah.
Good stuff?
Yes.
Seems realistic, right? Coming out of India, right? I think we should be proud about that. Of course, cricket has to come out of India, but reasonable quality. Why don't you talk about performance a little bit?
Yeah, performance, we did all the optimization we can, and using these tools, Intel's GPA, graphics performance analysis, we further raised the more optimization level. Like it helps us to track down the memory issues and memory performance plus the FPS graphics performance. So it analyzes frame by frame. On every frame you can track and you can check.
Cool, cool. And is that something, was that a problem beforehand? Did you feel that, if I didn't have the tool, you would have to do it. Without the tools, how would you have done it if you didn't have the tools?
It would be a trial and error. We have to play the game all the time. All the time we have to check the FPS. Sometimes it happens like in memory issue, you wouldn't recognize it in the earlier. But as you play the game, within half an hour, you come to know the issue. But using that tool, you come to know that beforehand.
Okay, cool. Well, give it up for these guys. Thank you. Thanks for coming. And I'm sure these guys will be around. Stop by, have a look at the booth, check it out, right? And then you can play the game also. Thanks, guys. So again, tools to help developers like these, essentially to make sure, actually I'm going to go back. So tools are, most of those tools which he talked about are available at softwarerental.com. GPA was another tool which he talked about. Essentially, we want to get the productivity, like Pratik mentioned. If he didn't have the tools, he would be doing, let's say, trial and error. You would probably still be able to get it, but the point is it improves your productivity and potentially improves the gameplay, so you get a slightly better consumer experience. And in graphics-oriented applications, hopefully a lot more better consumer experience. So encourage you guys to go download it, check it out, right? Nautilus.com, or is it called Nautilus on the Google Play? Yes. All right, a little bit of plug for these guys. So, all right, let's move on. IoT. I want to quickly wrap up with IoT. We talked about things, right? What you want to remember on the things is there are two sides of this. There's a business side and there's a personal side, right? And we're going to have, he's going to come up and show us some stuff. I'm going to very quickly talk about what do we need when we build devices, what do we need when we build these things called things, right? Typically relatively low power, right? I mean, you can't have a battery pack bigger than the device. These things run on very low power, assuming it's a personal device. Even if it's deeply embedded, consumes very low power. Connected, right? It has to be connected, otherwise it's pretty useless. Very small form factor and very secure, right? We've come down with a family of products. First one is the Quark, which came out. I won't go into all the details. Basically, it's got standard industry support, synthesizable, customizable. Then we moved on to the Galileo platform, where you build the platform on top of it. And we'll see some examples of how we use this. All right, Raghu, what are you going to show us?
Okay, so this is a sample application that I've developed, wherein I do a lot of...
So should people be looking at this screen?
Both this, and there are some other things out there. So we are talking about things here, right? So we are trying to connect things.
Yep.
So this is one thing, this is another thing, and there are so many things.
I'm feeling pretty warm, so I'm,
Yeah. So the way it is done is like in the morning we do a lot of monotonous activities, like you wake up and then you switch on your bed light, and then you switch on the water heater, and then you go off and start watching some online news, right? So to automate this, we have built this sample application, which is more like a home automation kind of thing, wherein I can go ahead, I can go ahead and schedule my activities, because regularly I do the same thing. So I can schedule it. So what it does is, like, it starts with the alarm, then in a regular intervals, right? Like maybe when I start, like, bed light will come on, and after that, after some time, then the fan will switch on, and at the same time, water heater is on, and after about 30 minutes, heater goes off automatically. You might forget, and it may overheat, right? So it automatically goes off. So that's what I'm going to demonstrate, and the same demo is also available on the booth. So we'll start this. Okay, alarm on, and hopefully you see that light coming up.
Anytime now. Oh, I didn't touch it. He turned it on.
Okay. Just a second.
Essentially, what he's doing is most of these devices are connected to a Galileo board, and through the sensors and programming through his laptop or whatever device he's got, he's able to do this. Now, frankly, these are relatively simple things, right? I mean, turning on a device, turning off a device, programming. Now, what happens here is all of this is integrated, and he's able to program it using a very simple, touch point click type of thing, right? And most of these boards now have, capability connected to standard sensors, standard Arduino platforms, standard, connectors, so that you can quickly start doing. You don't need an electrical engineer to go figure out all of these things. And, 12-year-old kids essentially can start building these things. Actually, I was told even 9-year-olds are beginning to do this at home. And many of these connectors are safe enough and they run off of 12 volts, that you can just put these things together and start building home automation projects. As simplistic as it is, you ready? That's okay. You can see this in the booth, right?
Yeah.
You can see this in the booth, and Raghu will be enthusiastically showing this to you. So thank you, Raghu. We're out of time. I'm going to quickly wrap up, right? But please do stop by and have a look. The point here is, as you start looking at this, it's a simple example of how you can start controlling different infrastructure. Now, you expand this to two areas, smart infrastructure, right? Yesterday, I was talking to a colleague of mine about pollution control. There's a lot of pollution control, smart infrastructure around the city. How do you start integrating that? How do you start programming that? More importantly, what do you do with that information? How do you put analytics around it? How do you combine IoT with analytics are areas? We're actually helping you, giving you toolkits to take the data coming from these sensors and start building analytics and start writing rules around it, right? So I'm going to keep going. Essentially, this creates opportunities for developers beyond traditional platforms, right? That's the point. A lot of people come back and say, well, how do I differentiate? I have yet another game app for a tablet. These kinds of devices open up possibilities so that it's simple enough and you can start building applications. I want to quickly summarize by one last slide and then we'll close. We talked about the Indian consumer, Indian downloads. You want to start thinking of the possibilities as the internet, as the broadband momentum, as the smartphone momentum grows in India, and you're going to have significant opportunities in all these areas. And the question I'd like to leave all of you with is, are you also starting to think about the India app opportunity? And that can create possibilities across devices, across machines, across things. Thank you very much.